What else am I missing? You make a. Uh, Hey, 63 res. How you doing? Doing alright. Setting up. You having a good evening? Eugene. Can't complain. Well, I guess that's better than having a read. Let's see here. Notifications. Good dog. Got my two dogs. Um, you can turn the air conditioner. Winter is finally over and get hot. Ready. Yeah, I think we're good now. Alright. Glad I'm catching streams now. Yeah, I should have just. Yeah. I kind of just been streaming erratically at random times, and sometimes going just days or weeks without streaming because I've whatever. Sometimes there's stuff in development I can't really show because obviously all the loot stream. So if I'm developing or actually implementing stuff into the game that's related to like the scenes, I can't really show that on stream. And while you probably could get away with writing like erotic or stuff, I haven't really had to chance it showing too much. I don't remember what the fuck. There's a few things I wanted to do. I got some writing stuff I wanted to work on. Just continuing the timeline, some in-game books the player can read, and then also I kind of wanted to mess with the combat. I'm gonna make sure the other dev is. Okay. Also, I haven't really shown off like the latest build stuff for a while, so I thought I'd just like mess around, showing that off a little bit. Because now that I've started uploading the VODs of streams to YouTube, maybe that helps. At least it's a place to store the VODs anyway. Considering Twitch deletes them straight away, pretty much. 14 days is how keep the VODs up before they get deleted automatically. Cursor, boobs. These steals. Done. So the players are probably about a house. For some reason you can go downstairs. You can go out. Kind of looks like weather filter. Appreciate the VODs, keeps me in the loop in case I miss something. Yeah, well, I imagine some people are interested in the VODs. That's, yeah, it's a good reason to make sure I download them and upload them to YouTube so people can check them out. Hey Rigoff, how you doing? It is pretty much a ghost town at the moment. Actually, on the current build, one of the other things the other dev is working on is actually adding NPCs to the current build. Where there's NPCs in the different locations for different times of the day, and they run around the town and do their own little routines and stuff. I always had planned for NPCs to exist. Just like I kind of explained before how I want it like they do in Elder. I'll have a basic routine, 4 different times: morning, evening, midnight, 5 times. So naturally at night they'll mostly be sleeping, except for if they're like special NPCs, maybe they'll be running around causing mischief, like drunkards at the tap. And then obviously your main character NPCs will have like pretty unique routines based on their routes and places they should be going to. But the reason I hadn't added NPCs is because I wanted these more, I guess, because if you play a lot of like the usual kind of like RPG maker based hentai games and stuff, the NPCs are pretty like they sit there in places, they don't really do anything. Maybe they walk around, and if you click on them, maybe get like a dumb one-liner or a joke. The NPCs don't really do anything. So I wanted to add these more like advanced NPCs, I suppose. But in wanting to add these more advanced NPCs, obviously that takes more time and resources. So that ended up delaying them being in the build at all. So kind of ended up with no NPCs, which is drastically worse than having at least some basic NPCs. I was like, fuck it. The other dev was already working on it. So I thought it was a good idea. Might as well just put the basic version of the NPCs in. At least it brings some life into the world, fully empty. And then once we're ready to add the more advanced dialogue system for the NPCs, then that'll all just work together and that should be fine. The day night, the filters don't seem to be working on this map either. Maybe they haven't been turned on. And then I think he's also attempting to import this version of the UI for Saphira. Because the current UI for Saphira is pretty bad. How you got the big rectangle on the right there. Not very intuitive or really tell the player how to go from the sort of more like once again keeping that kind of like elder system. Have all the services at the top, like if they're a vendor, there'll be like purchase or trade at the top, like a heroine or them to you could give gifts, you could romance the basic stuff, and then as you scroll down, you would then get like the more usual topics you can just ask. Like it's kind of messed up looking, but the blue gems are meant to be in the middle to kind of like separate these more services and action buttons, dialogue buttons. Invite Saphira to the party, and then her thing appears on the, and then you can click on her portrait to be able to pull up her menu to talk to her. Which is basically, I think that's a much more simpler and better looking version of what exists in the current game. Obviously, this is all placeholder stuff. There's no portrait here yet. The dialogue or the font is. Saphira is also just not showing up right now. Make it damage to Saphira. It's just stuff for testing. Um, Basically, there's just a bunch of test settings for different things, like making Saphira take damage. Because the idea, obviously, one of the other things with the combat stuff is the heroines. Maybe the protagonist, I'm still on the fence about it, but obviously your outfit has some form of durability. So if you take damage, your outfit gets ruined. So that was like, I think that was a test for that to see if her outfit would. Because if you take damage in combat, then that should be reflected outside of combat as well. So Saphira's outfit in this screen would affect if it's torn or not there at all. But I don't think it does anything. I should not have clicked that on the off chance it actually did something and showed Saphira without. Yeah. I just mean me, your voice seems to be cutting out a little bit here and there. The music is still playing normally. Is that the case for everybody else? My voice cutting out? I feel like every couple of streams doesn't cut out. Oh. Open the thread. Well, let me know if it keeps happening, Rigo. If anyone else has. Because I know my mic, because my audio setup always seems to have problems every couple of days. It's not a harsh cutout, but like a soft mute. It just be. I really need to buy a resin. I need to buy an actual boom. Hearing all the music probably. Maybe. I don't know if refreshing would. Maybe it'll just fix up. Stream goes on. They can let. But yeah, I need to buy an actual boom phone. So I can have it closer. Because I have the Blue Yeti, like in this little hand thing, corner of the desk. So sometimes I don't think it picks up my voice unless I'm directly staring at it. Yeah, you'd have a bunch of questions. There should be like a portrait for there as well. The status menu still needs to be fixed up, but also the background apparently is playing. The basic stats. There's the erotic menu, which all that kind of stuff. I can't like a record. That's a little. I think maybe the roofs going transparent need to have their radius shortened. The UI is definitely starting to layer or something. The UI is definitely better than what I had done. There's still a bunch of placeholders. Getting there. Yeah. Music's too loud. I don't want to work on some of the combat. Wondering if I should work on this version of the start a new pro. The other dev has basically copied everything from the current build. Let me just find the other build I had somewhere. There was another build where I was messing with this. I don't know what this now. Open this. Right. Okay. To be an enemy test. The graphic is not shown. We're pretty much just using placeholder assets to kind of like get the. We were just about the art stuff. So one of the problems with the current build with the combat is that so you have Brian's hands at the pull up paint real quick. Okay. So in the current combat, you have an enemy in the middle of the screen. You have Saphira taking up the right side of the screen. You have the player's hands. You have the combat log. I think you have body info. And there isn't really a lot of room on the screen to do stuff with, to do what we want to do because of how everything's kind of spaced out. So one of the things I want to iterate on with the combat is basically trying to reuse this, find a better way to reuse the screen space to get what you want on the screen. Main thing we want to get on the screen is we want more enemies on the screen. The combat is very much based on like Karen's Prison, Star Reclaimed, and other games like that, where usually there's only one character. So when there's one character, the battle is kind of balance is based around the fact that the player has one character to control, and the enemies could range from to 3 groups of 6 or something, depending how many waves they want to do. Whereas with our combat, player now would have a party of anywhere from 1 to 3, potentially 4 really far in the game when Envy becomes more of a character. Maybe she'll be able to be. So because the screen space is limited for enemies, it's kind of like the inverse problem, where we're kind of limited with how many enemies we can have on the screen, but the player's party can always outnumber the enemies, which makes it hard to of the whole NTR NTS stuff of the combat, where the enemies are meant to kind of like have an overwhelming numbers advantage, so they can build up a number of attacks on Vera, whoever's in the party, kind of like snowball the heroine losing their stats, so then more happens to them. And the player is trying to like kind of like trying to balance the heroine and themselves stats, fighting the enemy while also keeping their keeping them safe, I guess, for like the NTR pass specifically, or in the NTS route, using the heroines to their advantage to distract the enemy, or use their loot attacks if they unlock them, take care of the enemies. But if the player always has the numbers advantage, then the enemies can choose between attacking the protagonist or attacking the heroine. So there's never that focus. There's never enough numbers to focus on just the heroine. So it kind of like throws all the balance out of. So basically, yeah. So basically, the first iteration of the I did, very much just copy pasting Karen's prison. But in hindsight, that system worked perfectly fine for when you're a character. But for our system, where you have throws everything off. So that was one of the things I wanted to fix with the new iteration of the combat system. And the other is seeing if there's a better way to use the screen space. You want to utilize the screen space for combat efficiently and make it look smooth. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Um, and to do that, I don't think we can pull off the first-person perspective, like Brian's hands being on the screen. I kind of had a couple ideas for what this could look like. Maybe some players do like the first-person perspective idea for that, and maybe there is a way you could pull. Because the other thing to consider is that the combat has a lot of different assets because you have to have the main character. If we keep the main character as the most basic version, then all you'll really ever see of the main character is his hands when he does like an attack, and you could swap out the weapon asset with whatever weapon he has equipped. That's pretty easy. But when it comes to the heroines, you have like their main outfit. You have different stages of the outfit degrading as they fight more, and then you have their attack move. And have like extra artwork for like them. If you wanted to get more fancy, you have like a unique artwork for them taking damage, or like if they're using an item from their inventory instead of like we're using a spell from like a normal melee attack. And then you basically have to have all those different poses, and then the different different outfit layers on top. And that's only considering their main outfit. If they have alternative outfits, that's a lot more stuff going on. And then that's all for like just one heroine. So if we want to have all three main heroines, then there's a lot more assets required. And then when you get to the loot stuff, where you have like a close cut-ins, like the enemy groping, pulling, or doing whatever, then you also need those versions as well. So one idea, I suppose, was if one idea was if keeping with this idea of keeping with the idea of the first person perspective, then naturally the protagonist screen. You could have more enemies on screen. And then the idea would be that the heroine isn't screen all the time. Basically, whoever party members would only show up during their turn, basically. Either during their turn or when an enemy is attacking them. Otherwise, they're hidden. And that way, it doesn't matter as much about them overlapping. Actually, that doesn't even make sense anyway, because it does matter. If it's their turn, they would naturally be showing. And then they would naturally be overlapping potentially one or two enemies. You would always have like a combat log. Combat log is like half transparent. It's not like the biggest biggest problem. And then you still need some screen space for like basically where the HUD is. Either it could be all crammed in the bottom left-hand corner, or it could be spread around about the bottom. I think the current version is spread around the bottom, so that way the protagonist is in the middle, heroine slot. So I'm trying to keep the first person perspective. The heroine, I guess my preferred version, the player doesn't control the heroine directly. The heroines are basically AI controlled because they're their own characters. Instead, the player would get their normal attack and get some kind of like more command type, where instead of them directly doing something to the heroine during the move, they would use the protagonist's move to suggest a hero that or an idea, and through that you basically be doing stuff for their turn. If you did it like that, then it doesn't matter if the heroine overlaps the screen because she's just standing there during her turn. The player doesn't need to be able to input. It doesn't matter to the player if she's obscuring enemies. If the player isn't doing stuff during her turn. If she's just like AI controlled, then she would just have her turn. She could attack enemies. It doesn't matter what's visually on the screen. She can attack anything. And then when it's not her turn, she would be hidden. And it would be the same for when one of the villains shows up. You have like a villain in the third slot. Or another heroine. Basically, whoever's in the third slot would be on the left. And then the only thing that would matter is the player needs something on the screen that they can target, that they're able to click on the target for their attacks. Sorry, for their like spells to help the heroines or villain, or their commands to tell them to do something. So in that case, the player would probably be having to click on their portrait at the bottom somewhere because they wouldn't visually be represented on the screen. That's if we tried to keep the first person view idea. Now, the other idea I had, which I think might be the more efficient way of doing it, even if I don't think it really loses much for my person. Basically, the characters will be third person, so the protagonist would see himself on the screen or see Brian on the screen. And the view will be more in line with something maybe like Fear and Hunger. How you kind of like all like basically those kind of like RPGs where you see the line of your characters screen. The only thing I would probably do is try to tweak it to basically try to have like a more side view type, where you see like the characters kind of like your party would be like huddled on one screen, and the enemies would be on the other side. I bring up Fear and Hunger. It would be more like your characters are your party's on the bottom right hand side. The enemies are more taking up the top left hand side, and they're kind of like they'll be like angled in a way they're kind of looking at each other. And that way, you could fit a lot more enemies on screen. You could fit the party members on screen. There's another benefit to this style is because the characters are more what would you call it? You have more like a an avatar as opposed to like a full artwork version of them. That you could do a lot more art assets to cover all the things I spoke about before, but because they're not full screened art like in the current combat stuff, it would be a lot more efficient and drawing all the different assets and then the different outfit combinations and different attacks and animations. And then the best reason to do it is because RPG Maker by default kind of already has a system, a system for this stuff. So you'd obviously have to do something to make it suit. Well, it's a first person. There's a lot of jank behind what describing is kind of like how the Darkest Dungeon does. Darkest Dungeon is another game I thought about if we could do something like that. Because the reason I thought about the Darkest Dungeon stuff is because with the characters we have, like the character models we have already made for the map buff, like the ones you see on screen or Estelle and Saphira, like they could probably be used for the Darkest Dungeon. And that would be even more efficient because we already have made those assets. They might just need some couple extra animation stuff for like combat related. But we could pretty much just reuse the assets on the screen. I didn't really know. I feel like the only real. I'm trying to think that would be a problem doing it. I don't know if there'd really be a problem. It would just be a different. It'd be. It would probably be like if you consider the idea like the whole RNTS stuff. That the more the player feels like they're the character, then obviously the first person iteration stuff. The first person version is probably the best for that like immersion reason. Whereas doing the more darkest dungeon style will probably be like the more distance player and the character. Because I'm just yeah. Well, first I'll let me focus on this idea. Basically, you would have like the party more huddled in the corner. The enemies are more on the left. We'd probably have the probably swap so the combat log is on the top right, and then you'd have like all the different stats for the players party across the bottom. And then the enemies numbers and statistics, or rather their stats would be either at the top. When it comes to the players party, I kind of always imagined there'd be three. Wondering if it'd be better. Maybe you should just have four. Because one of the party combinations I imagined was having Renfrey, Usher, the protagonist, and Varric for a dungeon kind of being set up. I don't know if all of those characters need to be in the party. Maybe they don't have. Maybe Renfrey doesn't have to be in the party directly. Sliding scale of immersion versus which one? Um, I guess. Me personally, I think the maybe there is a way of, but I currently don't know what. So if we went with the other idea, did like a Darkest Dungeon style, have the party, would have like the players party on one side, then enemies on the other. The only thing is they would have to be zoomed out enough that there is a gap in the middle. The only problem with doing the Darkest Dungeon stuff is the whole character position that matters for combat in Darkest Dungeon would be a bit more complicated, as opposed to them just being more just visually in a line. I mean, but having the actual like mechanical side of it, where if an enemy is in slot 1, they can attack the first 2 slots, or if they're in slot 3, then they can't attack slot 2. That would be too much to do. That would require actual programming. How about the exact combat you just drew up and characters, i.e. Varric is AI control? Yeah, so their villains would definitely be AI control. And I personally think it would make more sense that the heroines are also AI control. And the player would have actions they can do in combat that relate to interacting with the heroines. And then naturally the villains can have attacks. I mean, I guess it depends on the villain's personality. But like, I could see like Varric like doing stuff with. Or rather, I could see like, if you had like Albus and Saphira in the party, I could see like Albus ripping Saphira combat, or like telling her, "Hey, let's go over behind a tree." Thing. Brian's like left to defend to protect them while they do whatever they're doing. Done into a game, you then see your wife in the village. How do you control the wife of the village? Sometimes villain grab your wife ways to get. Yeah, that's what I kind of imagined being able to do stuff like that. Like that was kind of always the plan. It's just more of like how to visually represent all this. Like if we use the silhouettes, sorry, if we use the side character model, like I imagine like if you basically took Saphira's bust that's on screen, and you gave her like a new animation that's like a boxing stance, like that's her like combat stance, and then she would have like a special, she'd have like a special artwork for doing her like attack move. And then say an enemy it does. So I kind of imagine it like, so you have like Brian and Saphira on the left side. You have like the 2 enemies on the right side. And then say Saphira's turn. It like pushes her basically the two whoever her and the target are, they're pushed towards the middle of the screen. It zooms in on them a bit. You have like some kind of like effect behind them. And then you have like plays Saphira plays Saphira's attack animation. Then it plays the enemies plays like the enemy's hurt animation or something. You have like some visual effects, sound effects, and then they go back to their position. Then say the enemy grips Saphira, then like they go back to the middle, then like it shows like disembodied like transparent-ish hands gripping Saphira or something. The reason for the group doing like the more transparent type hands is that if they're disembodied, then it doesn't require any crazy connection visually between lining up the enemy with Saphira and then having to worry about different enemies. Kind of like is an all representative animation for any enemy. Could do fancy stuff like the hand looks different. Like it could be like what Bart did for the vermin is that basically he basically made a bunch of human bandit art for groping and stuff, and then he basically like just went over the top like fur and longer fingernails to make vermin stuff. So you would do the same for the disembodied hands, that they could just look different colors or whatever based on who's doing the groping, but you don't actually see like did the hand or the arm connected to it. That makes sense. And then yeah, say you had a villain in the party. For his turn, he could like say Saphira like goes forward to attack the enemy, but then instead of the enemy walking forward, Albus walks up behind her and then gropes her, and like it interrupts her turn. I can see that. I feel like if you did a pure side view stuff, that would probably be the most simple. And I'm kind of honestly at a point where, well, I don't really want to I definitely do not want to sacrifice quality. I kind of have to look at what's just realistic, our resources, the time we have, and actually delivering on what people want. So even if there was like, yeah, that pretty much just says it. They're trying to have like some, even if it like is like the perfect idea I vision in my head, either is the way. I think the first person view idea would be fine if you were just like playing as there wasn't as many parts. The game was more like just you and a heroine, and you're like dungeon crawl. I could see that making more. I kind of honestly prefer the side view stuff when I think about it. Even if these artworks in here more like Avatar, another word, not that. Basically, like it's like a representation of it that looks kind of like the dark. Think about like the proportion, and then that way you can like if you did that, so it keeps the right perspective. Then you could easily like interlace the or you could have like interactions or sections with the more full art visual novel. I mean, the more I think about that, the more I like it. Then maybe it would be like a bit bigger than this, but you would have like maybe double the size or something, like the hero's party or Jagn's party, like the left, whichever side it is, the enemy side on the right, and then when you go to attack, how the player moves, the enemy and the player would both move to the screen, would zoom in to highlight them, get some back and forth. What are these icons? Chatbot icon. I did hear that Twitch is having bot problems lately. Yeah. Screen real quick. So then, yeah, basically, if you just had like the different parts, like one side of the screen, this bit doing just kind of going over some theory crafting, I suppose, for the combat, how that's going to look iteration. Kind of going over different ways of presenting it, different styles that are like first person, how it currently. You had like you had the party on one side, enemies on the other. So the others, so the other stats to keep it that have to be kind of like kept is the corruption meter stuff for the body part, different body parts. I kind of have to consider because there's a lot of information that has to be presented to the, and the more heroines you have in the that's a lot. Like basically every time you're a heroine, it does. You know, like the combat log. Um, basically have to have like health bar. Got, got something like. So, testing. Hello. Can you hear me now? I don't know what I did, but something I did apparently started messing with my microphone settings. I removed the noise filter. No idea what the fuck just happened. That caused a problem all of a sudden. So annoying. Yeah, I don't know what the fuck happened. So you have stamina. You have stamina. You have you have health. Well, you have health. You have mana. You have focus. It's like your three main stats. And then you got the body parts. So body part 1. Body part 1. think there's 7. Per heroine. So each heroine basically has all these different gauges to worry about. I think by default, the most important ones to be able to, or I mean, the ones that kind of like have to always show is the stamina, arcana, and focus. But then the body part ones could be like an extra toggle to hide them or show them. So I kind of like imagine you have like a portrait. Then you have like the various gauges like this. And then maybe you have like some pull out thing like this with the body parts. And you have a button you can click on and it hides that. You have like one of those for each of the heroines or whatever. The villains obviously don't need it. The protagonist really just has the NTR, NTS gauges, and then like an immorality or corruption gauge. They don't have like the individual body parts or anything. So you don't need like some fancy toggle for that. The other alternative would be you kind of treat it like they just have like a bunch of like buffs basically showing for the different body parts, and if you hover over it, it'll tell you the current value. So you have to be able to fit something like that on screen. I do worry if we did do something like the Darkest Dungeon style, then the player would probably expect that there is a matter to the orders of where characters are standing. The other thing about combat that the first person version, another like big draw of resources is having the backgrounds for combat, because you kind of like you have to have a background that matches the location you're in. So with the current combat stuff, that was requiring these pretty full-on backgrounds to be consistent with everything else. So if you went a more like Darkest Dungeon style, or even the more side view, then you could probably like you could have like the more like if you have like your characters standing, you could get away with more like this being the main focus, having some kind of like ground artwork, maybe a little bit of background stuff, and there's more like fog or just like it kind of fades into shadow on the sides. And then because you're kind of like looking down, it's more of like just a flat ground, really, you're looking at. It's not like some advanced architecture or like cave system or something in the background that has depth to it. The more I think of it, the more I do kind of like... I mean, whether it's Darkest Dungeon version or the more behind the characters angled version, I'm more leaning towards something in that nature instead of sticking to the first person because of the reasons I kind of outlined. I mean, as far as because the other thing that I wanted to do is I don't want the game to be grindy, but I feel like just the nature of how the combat's gonna work, there has to be some grind, and the more the player kind of like just does battles and stuff, they would kind of like feel the weight of that, no matter how grindy or not grindy it is, they would still feel it. So one of the options, going back to the idea of the player having more like extra actions they can do besides normal combat stuff, either it's interacting with the heroine. They will also have one that's like called observe or interact or something like that, where they can basically click on, say the a vermin is holding onto Saphira, then the player could then click on the vermin with the observe button, and then it would show like a close up, which would be the full artwork animation or whatever of what's going on between them, like the lewd side of stuff. That way, the player can opt in to seeing the extra lewd stuff. It's not just always forced and slowing down combat. Maybe you would show it the first time it happens. So like the first time it's a new event, it'll show it, but otherwise the player would have to observe it. Yeah. The more we could do that just revolves around the visual novel busts we've already made, the more efficient and easier it would be to pull off. Because the bigger like the base model is already made, and that's like the biggest work. So like adding some extra like grope motions to that, or uh, also I'm pretty sure the damaged outfits are already made for most of the heroines. Maybe not Tasha. I know Esther and Saphira both have the damaged versions of their outfits. So that's kind of already made. I'm kind of just had another idea. The only problem with the visual novel busts that we've made so far is that there's nothing below the thigh. Like they're not drawn full bodied because it kind of seemed unnecessary to draw the legs and everything. If they're not gonna, it's never gonna be shown. So that's the only problem with directly using the visual novel busts as also in combat as well. But I was just wondering if you did if you did use the visual novel busts as is, and you zoomed them, basically you scaled them down so they're a bit smaller, and basically you take like take like the Darkest Dungeon style, but you kind of imagine that you don't see their feet. So that basically the bottom half of the screen would be the battle, effectively, the battle area. Um, I'm just wondering if that's also not possible. So the other thing I have to consider is that the animated visual novel boss use a specific plugin. Like basically, these are all animated in Live 2D. Same program that I think a lot of VTubers and PNG tubers are made in. And there's a plugin to view those in RPG Maker, but it's not actually default in RPG Maker. So using those directly as like battle artwork isn't really possible, I don't think. There's more like a little bit of more janky stuff you have to do to get it to basically. You're basically for the actual character models, as far as RPG Maker recognizes them, they would be invisible, like placeholders, and then you would just draw the animated characters over the top of where they're meant to be on screen and move them around. So if we did use those, that would be a problem. But if you basically did more like, instead of like taking the full artworks, the visual novel busts, and you instead made new kind of like chibi little representations of them, and have those be the actual battle models, then that would work. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna have to talk to the other dev and work out what we're gonna do. He's kind of like currently busy working on current stuff for the next update. As I said, kind of talking about the NPCs, putting them in the game, and then fixing up a bunch of other stuff. Other problems I've done with my coding when I was still learning what the fuck I'm doing. There's a bit of leftover problems there that he's had to fix up. So once he gets sorted with all that stuff, it'll be time for me to start implementing all the new scenes. The animator just finished the new Crowley Ellie Win scene, so that's done. And then the Tasha Varric artwork is also animated. I have the dialogue for both now, I think, so it's about time to start implementing that stuff. I probably have to like do a quick edit over it just to make sure it's good, and then I can start implementing those scenes for the update and making sure that all works. So I'll have to implement the battle stuff for the current battle stuff for Saphira with the bandits, as well as the defeat scenario for that. Yeah. So there's a bit of stuff there to work on. But then once that stuff's all done, then I probably will get the other dev to start working on the new combat system. I was going to mess with some stuff myself, but then I kind of realized it's probably not a good idea to do that just yet. Because it's kind of like better for him to like work on it from the start himself, so he's more familiar with it and how it all works, instead of me like making another fucking mess that he has to sort out again. So I'll probably get back to just continue on the writing stuff I was doing. Is there anything else I had to go over? I can't remember now if there's anything else I wanted to go over. If anyone else has any questions for a couple of the new people here, feel free to ask any questions. I'm more than happy to answer anything. So I pretty much finished off the first era stuff earlier today. So as far as timeline goes, Only new people can ask questions now. I mean, if you got 100 different extra Saphira questions you want to ask, by all means, go ahead. Had to break the... Didn't you just say earlier somewhere about having 100 extra Saphira questions? What happened to all those? Don't have any Saphira questions today? Oh, okay. That's unfortunate. So where's my timeline here? Well, I do, but I'm not asking them just yet. Fair enough. I have a question about Brian. And TS Brian in particular. Hold on, I got a couple. By all means, please ask. I'm more than happy to answer. First language. So pretty much this is what I finished off yesterday. Basically just kind of setting up where a bunch of different... I'm basically trying to set up where the first like kind of like races begin in the world, in the maps. So basically, yeah, the first generation of the elves basically crossing the ocean to come to Netorare. Oh, sorry, to Netorasr. So basically, the first era. What would you even call this? So like Epoch 1, Era 1, Elves Land, Eldaras. So the Elves Land. What the fuck just happened? Okay, so the Elves land here somewhere. So the elves land there at some point. Then you have a bunch of different races starting to develop their own culture and everything, as well as like more just kind of individual monsters and creatures that have gotten very powerful. Where's my old version? Just trying to think how I wanna do this, because I'm trying to set up this there's a bunch of like the old races, or like the old kingdoms that kind of emerge as like the first kind of like cultures that exist in the world, and they war amongst themselves, and it goes to shit, and they all crumble, and then you have like the next generation of races that come along and take over different places, and they set themselves up, and then they crumble, and like there's like 3 different iterations of that before humans start to develop. Where the fuck is my old timeline of shit I had written down? Will there be more load combat interactions besides the vermin, and is it possible to get more load combat in the next update? There's definitely intention to have more loot combat besides the vermin. I think I kind of already spoke about how that was meant to be bandits. I think there was an earlier iteration update build that went out that had the bandits, but that got taken out as we did the second iteration of combat, and that still needs to be added back in. So one of the things I kind of want to do with the coming update is add in that bandit stuff if I can. Because it should, I say this, it should be relatively easy, because for the most part it is duplicating a lot of the stuff from the vermins, just swapping out the art assets. Though, of course, the bandits would have their own dialogue. They would just use the same vermin dialogue, so that part would be a bit more tedious to replace, because I still use the old dialogue system for the vermin. I haven't updated to the new dialogue system. That's a lot more easier to replace and swap out dialogue. But yeah, there's definitely an intention to have more loot combat stuff in the future. They are kind of like meant to go hand in hand between the scenes with the more visual novel style stuff, and then also the combat kind of going hand in hand. So the combat has definitely wasted away a little bit as the scenes were developed, which wasn't really my intention, but it kind of like went that way because of the problems I was having with the combat. So when we get the new iteration of the combat out, which won't be in the current update, but in the future, it should be a bit more. There should be a lot more going on with the combat as far as the loot stuff goes, and just the basic functionality of it. It should be a lot more fun to play and a lot more going on, and also easier to understand, because I think the current system isn't quite as intuitive as I would like. It's meant to be like a very basic, kind of like paper, scissors, rock, because once again I basically just copied the idea from Karen's Prison, as Sarah reclaimed. The idea of the paper, scissors, rock between different melee attacks. My whole thing that I wanted to do was like more of an elemental based paper, scissors, rock, kind of something like Pokemon maybe, with the different elements, considering you have different mages with different magic. So that's something I would add in the future as well when there's more elemental stuff unlocked for the player and that. Because the idea is the player is an alchemist. So what I was thinking of doing is basically the player can unlock. The player in the process of learning how to do alchemy will kind of like fail a bunch of times. And through his failures, he'll kind of like realize he can make very unstable potions that basically act as grenades. So he'll add like different elements to them to get like different fire grenades or ice grenades or whatever. And that'll be his way of doing elemental damage. So the idea is you'll have like the basic elements, and then of course there's more advanced elements. But at least the basic elements like fire beats water, or water beats earth, or earth beats whatever the fuck the system is. So Brian will adopt the combat system using the early builds fighting with potions. Yeah, I would like him to return to that. Like, he would have, like, basic melee stuff, melee skills he could do. But that's, like, not meant to be his... That's not meant to be his, main way of fighting. Well, you're on the team of cameos within the game. I think there's one person on the team that kind of wanted to do their own little thing, which I'm more than happy to oblige. But I kind of like, I didn't really have anything in mind for myself. But if anyone else on the team wanted to have like their own little characters or something in the game, that could be cool. Yeah, I never really thought about myself in the game. It'd probably be like some like wretched meme character, like an ugly bastard character or something. Mr. Cat wanted like a, well, he wanted like a cat man or some shit. That's kind of like a bit of a perv, so maybe he'll get that eventually. I did kind of consider, I did kind of consider the idea of maybe as like a Patreon goal that people could get something made in the game, like a character or a scene or something. But it's just really not very realistic because it would have to be expensive to make sense, and obviously just charging like a lot of money for like that doesn't really seem that great. I mean, maybe some people would be interested in that, but probably not a lot. Perfect Catman, like an anime Catboy, more like Pepe Le Pew. Um, Probably more like Pepe Le Pew, I guess. I can't remember exactly what he wanted to do, but it was some kind of like it'd be something. It'd be more like more NTS in line with like corrupting the girls and getting them to like go to the slums or visit the homeless people or something. That'd be more like in line with what he wanted. I'm more than happy to just have my name in the game somewhere. I also considered that as well. People having their names as like, because with the enemies in battle, the idea was that they would have just random names, randomly generated names. So I kind of thought, well, that could be cool. I guess maybe players could get their names as the randomly generated enemies or something, or just general NPCs in towns. The only problem with that is I would prefer that they were lore-friendly names, but that kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it? Because people want their names. So maybe would there be like an option in the settings where people could have lore-friendly names generated, or if nothing else, just throw my name in the credits. Throw your name in the credits, huh? Pretty sure it already is in the credits. Give me 1 second. Oh, wait, maybe I could just show off the new NPCs walking around as well. What is happening here? So many different versions of the project for all the backups and stuff. The game is like 1.5 gigabytes at the absolute most in its raw files, and I think I have like 350 gigabytes of just backups. If this ever wants to load. It's really taking its time, Jesus. I know we're counting rig off again, please don't disrespect all the ladies. So if I open the game right now, well, pretty sure I have to hide the screen again because the save icons, yeah, pretty bad. Okay. So you've got guards patrolling around the town, and there's like a very, very, very basic script where they'll chase after you at nighttime for the curfew thing the other dev was just testing. And then there's other NPCs around here and there based on the times of the day. I don't think anything crazy shows up here. Just Varric. Yeah. So they got various NPCs hanging out. Or talking amongst themselves. So if I go to Game End, Title, and I go Credits, there should be a D-Stills in here somewhere. There he is, right there. I think some names might also just be there twice because of the way I copied and pasted it. I also need to update that for the next update to make sure it's with the current patrons, since there's always new patrons and that. Sometimes I do forget to update it. Brian's on a mission for a client. The client doesn't know what his name. No, for whatever reason, he goes on an alias. That could be cool. As I said, it would be cool to get people's names in game. Obviously, naturally, I prefer a lore-friendly version, but people probably prefer their actual names or whatever. So it could be like an option in the dialogue. An option in the menu settings. The player could toggle off patron names or something, whatever I'd call it, and that way they see the more lore-friendly names, or they could just see patrons as like show up as random NPCs, either like just random NPCs on the world, or like in battle or something. You could also just do like, yeah, randomly generated quests. Maybe like you basically have like a set kind of quest, like this one's to kill bandits, this one's to kill this type of enemy, this one's to collect this type of item, and then it just randomly generates a name of whoever the client basically for the quest is. And you could say this quest is by 63 Res, and he wants 4 mushrooms. I need to think about this stuff more. I'm not 100% happy with the way I've done it here. Because, yeah, I basically want to have a bunch of different races. They kind of like come into existence. They all fight amongst themselves. They kind of like, in the process, enslaving and murdering and sacrificing humans. Because humans, like, not like one of the lower races at that time period. But then eventually humans would gain their supremacy and become like the main rulers. And the game's meant to like kind of like take place in the twilight of the human period, basically, where humanity's starting to fall off. Just trying to think what else I can do at the moment. Because I'm I was writing this today, and I kind of like had a bit of a block on it. A writing block on how to progress it. I think I just need to like just write up a bunch of crap, just spewing out all the ideas, and then take it from there. Kind of like sifting through that for what's actually useful. Need to find one of my old scenes here. That's not it. This is a scene. My music stopped again. Alright, let me find the new Crowley scenes that I had. Where did they go? So this is meeting the guild master. Oh. So basically, there's like a little initial scene where once the player basically set off the trigger, they go downstairs in the morning, they meet Tasha. Tasha then kind of like says, hey, Crowley, the new guildmaster, wants to see you, basically. Which then naturally the player doesn't want to do, but the player has to do, so the player would then have to meet Crowley. Crowley, he has heard you're better and wants... Crowley, word's gotten around that wants to see you in his office. He's being made the very guild master now. So yeah, so Crowley's basically meant to be like the main, I guess, probably the most petty and vindictive of all the different villains in the game towards the protagonist. And so the idea is he now wants to see him. As partially to do official guildmaster duties, but also to use it as a chance to humiliate and annoy the protagonist. And then the idea is basically the guild. He's made a bunch of new rules. One of which is that all guild members have to do a certain. They have a quota of quests they have to do per period, per month, or whatever. And so the protagonist, being in a coma, has naturally fallen behind on his quota, and now so Crowley's going to threaten him that he needs to do these quests that he gives him, or he'll be kicked out of the guild, basically. And then naturally, the Crowley is not going to give him easy quests. He gives him really difficult quests. One of which would be trying to basically eliminate a camp of bandits, which naturally he wouldn't be able to do. So he'll take Saphira with him. So that's a way to loop in Saphira to get towards the combat stuff with Saphira. This man's bring to my mind. Just like how Darius represents lust, the other villains could represent sins. Varric Pride, Elbow Greed, Crowley Wrath. So that was a thought I had, that basically each of the villains would actually have one of the sins. The only problem I found with that is it kind of felt that it made the world in the game feel smaller, that all the sins all happen to be in this one starting town. So that's kind of why I opted with just Lost appearing. And then from the way the game was set up, they kind of weren't originally together. But I like the idea, I suppose I like the idea still of, even if they don't properly represent the actual sins, like Envy herself, the characters could still kind of like have that trait to them. Like, that works. How many words is this? 2,000 words? It's not too bad. So yeah, the idea is, so Tasha sets him off. Tasha starts the quest, and then the player would have to go meet Crowley. They would meet Crowley, talk to him, get their instructions. They then will get the quest. They then go off on the quest to kill bandits with Saphira. And then you would come back to see Elise when hanging out in Crowley's office, and then leaving that, you will then get the Tasha Varric scene. Just leave a space. Be right back. Oh, you're fine, man. So one of the other writers already did the draft for this, and I'm pretty much just copy and pasting it. Usually I kind of like go over the drafts and edit them up quite a bit. But as we've gone on and we're kind of like got more on the same page, I don't have to edit or change as much now. As well as also because the different, I kind of like more laid out some of the locations and the characters and what's going on, the dynamics between them. That, yeah, I don't have to edit or change as much as I used to. So I've pretty much been able to just use exactly what they've written. Which obviously is good, saves a lot of time, having to redo or edit or change stuff. But I think I've actually just allowed myself to be a bit more hands-off and try to like control every little aspect of the project. Okay, let's see here. I stare at the office door in front of me, debating whether should I got summoned, I got the message. No, that just no. If I did that, it would just get no. That's too long. No. That'd just get Tasha in trouble. I doubt that. Start harassing her. Here goes nothing. Knock, knock. the idea is meant to try to like convey. Well, yes, one of the underlying sort of things I'm trying to convey is that uh, at least when is under his desk doing stuff, so that's kind of like meant to come across in the dialogue without really explicitly saying what's going on until it's revealed later on once the player has finished the bandit quest. So that's kind of going on. The office is large and well furnished. Several cabinets line the walls. Large wooden desk dominates room. Fuck. Does this make any sense anymore? I know it still makes sense. Yeah, no, it's fine. Okay, I was thinking of the order of, because originally the setup was going to be that the lewd scene happened first, and then the scene played out, or rather, then the conversation played out, and then the player would receive the quest, and then they'd have to come back later. But I kind of like changed the order because it made more sense in hindsight that the player would start the quest, do the quest, and then they'd get the reward for doing the quest, which is the scene. So the order was changed. But then there was a particular thing I wanted to have happen, which I wasn't sure if it made sense anymore, but I think it should still be fine. Kind of have to like, keep going on with the scene and kind of like just see how it plays out, if it still makes sense. And if it doesn't, then I suppose I'll have to change it. Okay. We're totally getting tired now. Smell of stale sweat lingers in the air. Smell of stale sweat lingers faintly in the air. Who's inhabitant? Man behind the desk, with how bulky he is, almost looks comical, hunched over his work. I'm back. Welcome back. I heard you wanted You heard you wanted to see me? Question mark. Did I miss any Saphira talk? Not at the moment. Kind of working on this Crowley Brian introduction scene here. Basically setting up a quest chain. Introducing Crowley, setting up the quest chain to go fight some bandits with Saphira. So that will lead to Saphira combat stuff. So that is somewhat Saphira related. And then having to set up the defeat scenario for Saphira. This goes on for a bit. I feel like my brain is fucking mush at the moment. I've been staring at this shit all day, and I think it's finally just fucking short-circuiting the dialogue in that. Kind of like hit a roadblock on the other, working on the timeline stuff. And now I'm just like looking at this Crowley stuff, and this is like, oh, my brain. I'm pretty much just retyping exactly as the draft is, because really there's not much stuff that needs to be changed, if at all. Fire up WoW, let's just do the work. I kind of stopped playing WoW, because I was really kind of like really into the classic WoW, hardcore classic WoW, but I kind of got a little over that, because it was yeah, died a couple times. So repeating the same stuff over and over again is definitely a bit boring. I've been meaning to find another game to be like my main game I play for a while now. I haven't really found anything that's been able to like keep my interest. I don't want to go back to playing League of Legends. I'm kind of like over that now. I think I'll finish this page and then see what happens. Could sound a bit happier. Alright, listen up. That'd be useless instead of crippled. Behind in your mandatory quest corridor. Changes since long story short, we've had enough of the layabouts. The guild, everyone needs to complete quests monthly or else be removed from the guild. Alright, I got another question. I can't remember if I asked this one, or opinion rather. I can't remember if I asked already about this, but I'll ask again. Opinion on eye color for Envy. There's also like an iteration that had like a more green lips. And then there's an iteration with overall paler light skin. I'll just get rid of that one and just crop it the way it's cropped. Yeah, so you got basically black lips or the more green ones. And then you've got purple eyes or green eyes. And then you've got darker or paler skin. Purple works better, IMO. I do like the purple eyes better too. Everyone seems to like the purple eyes. I think everyone on the team preferred the purple eyes as well. If she's all green, I just make her a broccoli lady. What about purple lips? I wonder how that would look. Digging all of them, but there's purple eyes are just it. Seems everyone likes the purple eyes. You guys like it. Everyone on the team prefers the purple eyes. I guess purple eyes it is. Now this is someone else on the team decided to do this. I'm not 100% a fan of it. But basically if she was instead more grey instead of green. I'm curious what you guys think of that option. If her skin is pale, her hair should be green. You mean pale, if her skin is pale grey, her hair should be green? I personally prefer the green colouring theme to her body, because Embryo kind of already has the grey thing going on. That's kind of like why I was trying to like avoid going towards grey. Let me hide the screen for a second. Okay. There we go. I've asked the artist if he could just see what purple lips might look like. See if that would. I feel like the black lips is it, but maybe purple looks okay as well. I don't know. People like the purple eyes. That's cool. I think kind of like what I just said before. Though I kind of prefer the pale green skin as opposed to going more grey skin, just because it gives a bit of separation from Embryo. And I think the grey skin also looks more like Midna from Legend of Zelda, so I've been trying to like avoid using the same colours. Kind of like already have a similar pattern thing going on with the characters, so I didn't want to also use the same colours. Because the whole the colour scheme idea was basically based on like Shigo from Kim Possible, the black and green colour scheme. Is that skin even paler? I can't even tell. Oops. Is that paler? Oh, it kind of technically is. That's pretty much what she looks like in full at the moment. Naturally, she has to be censored. I think there's still some... The hair's not finished. No, there's a seat. A cushion, a magic cushion she sits on. She looks like Midna had the big ass helmet. Well, I mean, I kind of like said before that Midna was kind of like a bit of an inspiration. Because because when I first envisioned the character, I kind of envisioned her more like Navi from Ocarina of Time, like more of like an assistant tutorial type character, and then copying like the Midna idea visually should be more like a fourth wall breaking character to kind of like explain systems and tutorials and whatnot. But then I kind of wanted to once I kind of like as I kind of like was thinking about the story, I kind of like decided to incorporate her more in the story and less of more like the just a joke, more of like, but basically incorporate it as like more of an actual character instead of like a meme or a joke. But yeah, see what if he can see what the other option might look like though. Go back to writing here. I'm gonna copy the draft in here. Oh god, okay, that didn't work. Followed the wrong format the whole time. Probably I will have to just type it out. Crowley's, face, crunches, 2 in. Alright, back to... Is this really 11 aerial? Why is the font lying to me? And you have by having played a single one. You have by having played a single one this month. This dialogue feels very middle of the road between the two routes, which I'm not 100%. Don't know if it's the best way to go. I have to keep going and then see how it looks by the end. And then maybe there should be like a bit of a branch to have a bit of more of a flavor between the two routes as opposed to keeping like in the middle. But maybe it's not necessary. I'll see how it goes. I don't know if I would like that line. I feel like it should be a bit more sarcastic, like Crowley going like, "Oh, should we break out the welcome wagon for poor little Brian, or should we all put the put the set aside all the rules for the academy for poor little Brian," or something more in that line, something more like along those lines. I don't remember. Where's the message? Talk, conversation, dialogue, voices. Kari, Embria, Renfrey, Elise Wynn, Barrack, Saphira. Huh. Where the hell is Esther? Apparently I never made a voice file line for Esther. Because the other dev was asking about it. That's weird. I guess I forgot that for some reason. I'm kind of a little out of it right now for writing stuff. I feel like brain's not working. Sorry, the other dev was asking me something. Okay, so how are you guys doing? Fuck. I'm kind of thinking if I should end stream or just hang out for a little bit longer. Kind of tired. If time allows it, I might stream tomorrow at an earlier starting time again. Kind of just depends on my schedule. My sleep schedule, if I wake up in time. Sleep schedule's a bit of a mess at the moment, so I've been waking up later. apparently when I created the Esther scenes, every character. This is one of the things I tried to do, which kind of never really worked the way I wanted it to work. But the idea was every character was meant to have their own sound file. So when their dialogue is happening on screen, there's like a unique sound file for them to help. Just kind of like bring more to the scenes, that you have like a bit of a voice or some kind of sound that kind of like represents the character. It wasn't super fancy like in like The Sims or Animal Crossing or anything like that. It's more in line with something like Undertale, I suppose. How there's like a sound file that plays repetitively when their dialogue is appearing. But some of the sounds are okay. Some of the sounds aren't that great. I kind of need to go through and overhaul and make new sounds that are proper for the characters. But apparently, when I did the Estelle scenes, I just never did that process for her, so she doesn't have a sound file, which is very strange. Because I did it for the Akari dudes, so I did it afterwards for other scenes, but I somehow just skipped over Estelle's scene, which is very strange. So it uses 1, which is Envy. 0 is Brian. So at some point Esther comes into the picture. Noida. Brian. Noida. This is the wrong scene. Wait, no it isn't. She comes up later. Here. Brian. Envy. Brian. Estelle. Dialogue voice 16. So where is 16? Dialogue voice 16. So 16 is Akari. So apparently I just messed up Estelle's voice stuff. That's annoying. Yeah. Yeah. I might stop the stream here, guys. My brain's starting to turn to mush here. And I need to kind of eat some dinner and then reset. And then I'll probably pick up tomorrow and stream a bit more. I might have some more things to show off tomorrow. I'll see how. Basically, I'd like. I'm not an artist, so it's not easy for me to really know how easy or hard something is. So I don't know if it's hard or easy for the artist, for Bart, to swap in and out different colors, to just like test stuff, like what color schemes work. So I'll just ask him how easy it is, because otherwise, maybe what we'll do is we will just mess with a bunch of different colors for different things, and have it all on screen, and then we can kind of throw and pick the kind of like color combinations that work best, providing it's easy to do. Otherwise, I might have to just stick with how she looks for the most part, but we'll still go with the purple eyes, I think. Yeah. Alright. That's going to be it for the stream. Thanks for watching, everybody. I appreciate it. Welcome to the new people that stopped by. Hope you enjoyed the stream. And we'll continue to try to do streams this week coming. Try to do more regular streams. And upload the VODs to YouTube and all that good stuff. Yeah. Tomorrow I'll probably try and go over more dialogue stuff. And probably gonna start messing with that new plugin I found for dialogue. That might be a better way to implement dialogue faster way to implement dialogue in the future. But I'll see what happens. I think I'm gonna put the combat stuff on the back burner for a little while until the other dev is finished up implementing all the new systems and stuff he's working on. Because the combat will take a bit of time, I think, to really tweak and mess with to get it the way we want it. But as that develops, of course, I'll just show it off on stream and whatever, see what you guys think. Yeah. Alright, thanks for watching.